You can talk all you want about Leon S. Kennedy, Chris Redfield, and Jill Valentine. But for my money, the most consistent hero in survival horror is none other than Edward Carnby. He's the star of the barely remembered Alone in the Dark franchise, an early precursor to the Resident Evil series. We looked at the first game last Halloween, so I thought it might be fun to dive into the sequel on its 25th anniversary. So turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the story and ending for Alone in the Dark 2: One-Eyed Jack's Revenge. This is Game Over, the early years. When we last checked in with Edward Carnby, he had just escaped a mansion so scary that even ghosts run away in fear. It's been 3 months since the horrific events at Derceto, and instead of enjoying Christmas with his family, Eddie is headed to California to help his partner Ted Stryker crack a case about a missing girl named Grace Saunders. What Carnby doesn't realize is that Ted is dead. He was killed investigating Hell's Kitchen, the home of the notorious pirate One-Eyed Jack and his brutal gang. Wait, pirates on the West Coast? In 1924? Yeah, something supernatural is clearly afoot, and our hero knows that this isn't going to be your typical kidnapping case. But before Edward has a chance to discover the horrible news, he'll first need to navigate this frustrating hedge maze. It's here where we begin to piece together the history of One-Eyed Jack, who captained the Jolly Roger in the 18th century. Look, all this is going to be important later, but first Carnby has to escape the maze by using this ladder. But don't feel too comfortable, Eddie, because there's only so much ladder, which sends our hero falling. And falling. And some more falling. More falling. Man, just how deep is this hole? Still falling. Okay, he finally makes it to the bottom where the water breaks his fall. But wait, this actually isn't the bottom, because he somehow falls into another pit and winds up in some sort of underground passageway. It's here where Carnby discovers the lifeless body of his partner, Ted. Thankfully, Stryker left a letter that helps fill in some of the details. Here's what he has to say about One-Eyed Jack.
Carnby, if you read this, it means I am dead. The Saunders child was kidnapped by One-Eyed Jack, despite what the newspaper claimed. That man is a monster, obsessed with gambling and death. Hell's Kitchen is full of secret passages. I am sure that for one of them, the solution is in the cards. Remember our poker games. I can also tell you that the gang makes whiskey in the cellar and transports it by boat at high tide from a cave.
Carnby, you must rid the world of that filth and save the girl, if you can. It is time for the slave to become stronger than the master.
As it turns out, Ted wasn't the only one leaving helpful notes. Edward discovers another piece of the puzzle while investigating the old whiskey cellar Stryker told us about. It reveals that One-Eyed Jack has found a way to grant himself immortality. But there's a catch. There's a ritual he'll need to renew every 100 years, which he started on December 24th, 1724. For those not keeping track of the time, that's exactly 200 years ago to the day, which means that Carnby may not have much time. Hey, you remember all that stuff about gambling that Ted talked about? Apparently, One-Eyed Jack was a bit of a card shark, and the puzzles hidden throughout the underground labyrinth definitely reflect that. But Edward has a plan. He's gonna dress up like Santa Claus and investigate the rest of the mansion. Now, this is the bit where we look around a bunch of different rooms looking for items we can pick up and weapons we can use for defense. And that's important because Hell's Kitchen is teeming with undead creatures. We're just gonna skip over the back and forth of the puzzle solving and skip right to the bit where Carnby gets captured by Jack and forced to listen to his story. I'm just gonna let him explain what happened.
By the horn of Beelzebub, the Flying Dutchman was calling me. It was like honey to a bee. The enemy wanted to put an end to it. Its cannons spouted death. No matter. My ship was sinking, but my praise bridge flowed with blood. On this Xmas Eve of 1724, the cries of pain filled the air like the most glorious of hymns. The captain, one Nichols, told me to go to the devil. He died cursing me. "You will die by my sword, Jack!" Ha ha! His sword remained stuck on the deck of his ship, the Flying Dutchman. My lieutenants greedily burst the locks of the hold. The crew seemed disappointed with the loot, but I knew we had taken the finest of all treasures. And in Elizabeth's eyes I could read our destiny, and death became an illusion. I signed the pact, and so did my men. The Dutchman was ours. From then on, thousands of legends were being told about the Flying Dutchman. We hid here in 1824, but the cliff collapsed on our ship, and so our land flowed with blood, and we named our conquest Hell's Kitchen. A land with no past offered itself to us to guarantee our future. We built our mansion, and since then we reign undisputedly. Ha 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 ha!
Okay, I'm still a little curious how pirates managed to sail to California, but first Edward needs to use the hook he grabbed to pick the lock and get the hell out of this cell. Now, if you're wondering who that Elizabeth woman was that Jack talked about, then prepare to be surprised when she bursts into the door and chases our hero down the hall. It's here where we get a taste of her power. She knocks Carnby out without even touching him and then raises his body off of the ground. Ugh, things are looking bad for our hero. The good news is that all this commotion has allowed Grace to escape and mount a rescue mission. She basically sneaks around the exterior of the mansion, picking up items while the gang isn't looking. This gives us a chance to explore the backyard and prove that she's a real hero. Yeah, this is her chance. Edward is counting on her. So she pieces that statue back together and, oh look, she gets kidnapped again. Well, so much for that plan. Now when Carnby comes to, he quickly realizes that he and Grace are captive on an old boat. This gives Elizabeth a chance to explain her side of the story, and it looks a lot like this.
More than 2 centuries ago, Elizabeth Jarrett arrived in Haiti. I was then an innocent young girl, but Cotton, my tutor, taught me contempt. In hiding, a slave of his taught me to ride the shadows. Soon, the slave grew stronger than the master. Cotton felt the extent of my revenge and became my creature. The soldiers took us prisoner, but could they recognize Cotton? From then on, the Flying Dutchman was my jail. I could see the desk where the captain hid the duplicate to the iron's key. My spirit wandered. One-Eyed Jack heard my call for help. My soul guided him, and death is my ally. He and his crew would become immortal, and every 100 years, an innocent girl would turn old for us. A gust of freedom freshened my jail.
Well, I guess that explains what Grace is doing here, but what I don't understand is why they decided to not tie both of the captives up. I guess it's good they didn't think of that, because Grace wakes up and continues her mission to save herself and Edward. What she needs to do is sneak past all of the pirate guards and find that iron key. But that's not going to be an easy task, because it requires her to head back into the mansion and search One-Eyed Jack's desk. Thankfully, the little girl is persistent and has no problem finding the key. Her plan is to sneak back the way she came and then use the dumb waiter to get back onto the boat. It's a perfect plan and nothing could possibly go. Aw, man, she got captured again. Grace is the worst. Oh well, at least she's able to toss the key over to Edward, who's able to break free of his shackles and kick some pirate booty. Finally, the good guys get the upper hand. Carnby snags the guard's sword and races through the boat looking for Elizabeth. But wouldn't you know it, the exact same thing happens when he finds her cabin. He gets a massive headache and then starts levitating off the ground. The good news is that Grace knows what to do and finds the hidden entrance to Elizabeth's room. This is her chance to slowly walk across the room and use this chicken bone to kill the witch. Guys, don't ask me why this worked, just go with me on this one. So this frees Edward up to face off against One-Eyed Jack in one of the most awkward sword fights you're ever gonna see. I'm telling you, the whole thing's kinda pathetic. But at least we get the job done, and here's what happens when you save Grace in the original PC version. Now, here's what happens when you beat One-Eyed Jack in the PlayStation and Saturn ports. Of the two, I prefer the simplicity of the original ending. I like how Jack essentially dooms himself with a cannon, which is followed by Hell's Kitchen crumbling to the ground. We don't get a lot of fancy camera angles or a polygonal creature, but a lot happens in that single frame. Plus, I just think it's cool when the cliff caves in. It leaves a design that looks a lot like a face. Now, as far as the newer console ending, I'm not a big fan. Sure, the 3D effects are fancier, but the whole thing leaves me with a lot of questions. The cinema makes it look like we're sucked underwater and have to swim to safety, but the final shot shows the boat in tip-top condition. Are you trying to tell me that the two of them were in that boat the whole way through, even when they had to fit through that gate? In a game where you use a chicken bone to kill a witch, I think this boat mystery is the least believable part of the game. Oh well, at least they made it out alive. Here's hoping that Edward Carnby takes some much-needed vacation before immediately jumping into Alone in the Dark 3. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, The Early Years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes every Monday. Oh, and if you still want more, then you should definitely check out our episode of the first Alone in the Dark game. It's a good one. Now, here's the question I have for you. Which version had a better ending? One had a simple, pixel conclusion, while the other had a fancy 3D cinema. Which did you prefer? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with a review of The Ninja Saviors, Return of the Warriors, followed by In Between and Out Buddies. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.